Hello, everyone. You are now with us on Mondays. Mondays with Lily Sin Barreras, Lily Without Barriers, the only show that you can do this in English and in Spanish, como tú lo quieras. You know, my goal is always, 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 and more always, is to take a message that really takes us out of the traditional um, message about what mental health looks like, what our challenges look like, what are the barriers look like. And so it's very important to me to bring material authors, people who actually understand what that looks like, and not just people who pretend they do. Y'all know I'm very, 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 very honest when it comes down to that. We are waiting for Dr. Margaret Robinson Rutherford to be with us. She says she is somewhere around here, so let's hope that by clicking the button, she will join us very soon, which is one of the recommendations we have for everybody. Get out and come back, and that usually works for everybody who is watching us. But I want to start with us before we introduce the doctor and do all these wonderful things. Margaret Robinson Rutherford is not someone I have ever met, ever, ever met. I have been doing some work for Puerto Rico for the Hurricane Maria, and all of a sudden she popped up on my Facebook, and her message just made me feel like she was one-on-one with me. And that's not easy for a psychologist to do, especially on social media. And I have found some very, very loving and interesting people, and I think very qualified people, um, but no one with her message. And that's why I think it's so important for us to be able to be with her today. And I hope that it all works out. Soon I'll get a message from her. Good evening, Rebecca. Hi, Doña Elsie. And it will tell me when she is coming in live, and I will let her know. All she has to do is press that button. But before we go to that, let me just tell you, she has a podcast, right? So part of my job is to do what? Research. Hi, Ruthie. Is to do research and to figure out really what the message of this person is. Now, I come from the thinking, this is of somebody who has survived suicide. This is from somebody who's has a brain injury. This is of somebody who's been in psych units. This is from somebody who's actually been through the journey, right? My journey, not anybody else's journey. I disregarded completely the idea of wanting to talk about my parents and my childhood and all of that. I thought that was just crap, 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 crap. You know, let's deal with now. I don't need to know what happened to me in my childhood. Don't need to know that. Come on, come on, come on. Let's get fixed. Well, listening to her podcast and the people she's worked with and the people that she interviews, and also her book, which some of you will get for free today, just like you did with Carmen Cotto. They're coming out now soon in January. I must tell you that she has really changed my mind about how important it is to go back about learned behavior or thoughts. I have in trainings, when I talk to people about mental health, I say to people, I have a monkey in my head, and my monkey types. And many of you have never seen a typewriter, heard a typewriter, but you can go on YouTube, and the sound is tick, 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 ding, tick, 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 ding, tick, 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 ding. And so can you imagine having that in your head all the time? All the time. So the message is, mine is monkey. The message, you can name it whatever you want. I learned this from the doctor, but I've been doing this for a while. Hi, Danny. I've been doing this for a long time. In my recovery, once I wanted to take the message out to the public. I wanted them to know that they were not alone. I wanted to know that the monkeys in their head are not who they really are, they're thoughts. And they don't always have to convert into action. Obviously, I am not a clinician. And I desire not to be a clinician. I think that's such a big job. And you really have to be prepared for doing some of the work that they all do. But Dr. Margaret really takes her time, and she has this very soothing voice also, really takes her time at explaining to you the process, the need to really do the work, to go inside, to really find yourself in a place where you can go, uh-oh, maybe, just maybe, I need to be doing something else. I need to be doing um, some more work. I need to start looking about at how I behave. Okay, I need to do that. So I want to make sure, and this is her. I'm just answering her. Um, and this is her trying to get on. But what I can say to you about Dr. Margaret is that she has a podcast. And I love Audible since I discovered it. I love it. I don't always have the patience to read a whole book due to my brain injury and all of those things that came with it. I don't always have the cognitive to do all of that. But on Audible, this is great for me. I do read a lot. I'm an avid reader. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that Audible is very, very helpful to me. And she has a podcast, as you can see up there, that's called Self Work. This past podcast, I promise you, it is the bomb. It is incredible. She has guests who come in. She's very open. She's vulnerable. She tells you about things that she has learned herself in her journey as a therapist. She also tells you about how she's learned from her patient, talks about boundaries, talks about things that we can grow at doing. Wanda, can you check with the doctor for me, please? That would be great. So in her book, and check this out. This to me is like amazing, amazing. Listen to this. Perfectly hidden depression. Perfectly hidden depression. When I also bought the book because it's part of what I do, but I'm now like an addict. Like I'm like going at it and going at it. Lots of stuff to work on, lots of stuff, examples, none of it condescending. None of it is condescending. All of it is at your pace. Uh, all of it. All of it is at your pace. All of it is, let me just see if I can find her here. Would you guys give me a minute? And she might come up again. Mandita, if you could help Doc, I would be so happy. If you could kindly do that, because she will come up here and I will be able to see her and let her into the green room. And it would be devastating to me if we couldn't do that with her today. So I'm suffering of anxiety right now. But in this book, okay, and in her work, there's so much she's done. She's on Facebook, she's on Instagram, she's on Twitter, she's on Pinterest, and she offers all of these things to you. Lots of these things are free, right? The Audible, obviously, you have to pay your membership and all of that kind of stuff. But there's a lot that you can get for free, right? For free. And I don't know many therapists that can say that they are able, or psychologists that are able with the expertise that she has to provide you all of this information and guidance and conversation. Most of us need conversation. So there's a couple of things as this all works out, which is giving me lots of anxiety. There is a couple of things. So she gives you this guide. Check this out, guys. I'm going to be very open here. All right. So she gives you these examples. The book has amazing reviews. People love it all over the place. But this is perfectly hidden depression. So this is not something that you probably will go to your therapist. And I'll tell you this, I had this experience. I went to my therapist, who I like very much. And the first time I told her that I had a brain injury, her response was, "You don't look like someone who's had a brain injury." So my immediate gut, she talks about the gut too, was I'm walking out of here, lady. I don't have to explain this to you. Life is way too hard. Do I have to explain this to you? So I left her office a little bit confused and thinking that we were the wrong match. But I returned. And when I returned, she said to me, I cannot believe that I said that. I cannot believe that I said that to you. And she is actually I'm gonna put this up, Doc. I hope you are you watching the show? That would be very, very helpful if I knew if you were watching the show because she is definitely trying to get in. Um, so are you watching the show? And if you are, I can put this up here so you can see it. And I have to do this for a lot of guests, and I will put it up here. Guest copied, clipboard. There you go. And I'm going to put it like right here. You guys hang in there with me. I know that my marketing guys are going crazy. They are going crazy because they're working so hard on this. So hard. So I know they're just like hitting themselves over the head in this moment right now. And we will delete this and we will put this up for her here and see if that works for her. And it should show right about now. So Doc, that is the link right there for whatever reason you're having trouble coming in. But if you go into that link, like many of our other guests, for some reason, that becomes a little bit easier for you. Okay, that said, I can't stop talking enough about her book because if she is not able to jump on, I definitely don't want you to miss out in all of this stuff. So I was the person at the therapist's office going, you don't need to know about my childhood. Whatever happened in my childhood happened in my childhood. It's over. Let's move on. What's the fix? ¿Verdad? Bienvenida, bienvenida a todos. Bienvenida, Alejo. ¿Cómo estás? So yo era la persona en terapia. Esta doctora es vital porque esta doctora es psicóloga, lleva muchísimos años haciendo esto, escribe un libro, tiene un podcast también que ustedes lo pueden escuchar en Audible, iTunes, todos los lugares, Spotify, todos los lugares. Ha sido la única doctora que me ha convencido a mí que el pasado se refleja en el presente. Yo me crié en un ambiente donde ya lloramos las 3 lágrimas y vamos a levantarnos y echar para adelante, pero uno nunca se toma el tiempo, ¿verdad? El tiempo para saber por qué yo reacciono de esa forma, por qué esto me molesta, por qué aquello me molesta, por qué yo no puedo tener amistades íntimas. Y como yo siempre empiezo por mí, le digo lo siguiente. Yo soy una persona que la gente dice, Lily es súper amorosa y querendona, y de verdad que soy súper amorosa y querendona. I love to share my love with people, do all of that. But I don't always like people in my home, in my personal space. So I used to say things to myself before learning about Dr. Margaret. Let me just tell you, this has been really, really tough. I used to say things like, I just don't like big I just don't like people in my house. I just don't like that kind of stuff. And then what I started learning was that when I grew up, that was the message that I received. Take care of your household. Don't let everybody come into your household. And those great advice. I'm like telling you, great advice. But it does not help me have the intimacy that I need with certain people. I just had this conversation with my right hand. Okay, just had this conversation. Just had this conversation. And my response was, what? That's just the way I am. Here she is. She's not a quitter. You know, My heart is pounding beyond belief.
You're so sweet. Anything else? Hey,
Oh, there you
there
are.
I am. There I am. It's hot in here.
Well, I'm at that stage in my life that I don't know what my body temperature is doing, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Menopause has been fun. There's a
I'm
lot of young people
very
going
glad when menopause was over. That's for sure.
So, Dr. Margaret, I don't know if you've been listening to me.
No, I
Oh,
couldn't hear a thing. In fact, your assistant sent me finally a new, but a new link. And so
right.
I was looking on my phone and she sent it via email. So I saw it finally.
I just want to say thank you. I'm going to reintroduce you. I was talking about all of the things that in this short time, I was clarifying to everybody we have never met.
Nope, we've never met.
This is
We
the
talked the
first
other
time I
night.
see
We had
your
a
face.
wonderful conversation.
Right. We had this conversation. However, I was on the phone with you and felt like I knew you. And that's a talent.
Well, in junior high, my teachers would always say, Margaret, you talk a lot. You think you
So
ought to talk less and listen more. So
I become a psychologist. There you go.
there you go.
I want to introduce you, but I'm not going to take your entire bio because there's so much you're offering for free and for such cost-effective ways. Your book, I'm like an addict. I'm like an addict. So I want everybody to know, and I said this before, but I want you to hear it, that Dr. Margaret Rutherford has been a psychologist in private practice for over 25
Oh,
years.
Lord have mercy. That's a long time.
25 años de práctica. When I said to you, doctor, that, oh, she just texted me today and said, please call me Margaret. And I was like, someday. That's a cordial thing. My mom is here. So
Oh,
we
okay.
talked about my mom already, right? um, but there's so much you offer on your Facebook, on your Instagram. There's so many things you offer for free.
Yeah. Well, I decided my son left for college 8 years ago now, 8.5 almost. And there were some other personal circumstances that uh, asked or required or seemed to, it was a good idea for me to stay at home more. And so I started writing. And when I started blogging and the podcast, especially, I really wanted to address so much of what people don't understand about good therapy and the benefits it can have for everyone. And I wanted to basically what I say on my podcast is I wanted to extend the walls of my practice. But life has been very good to me and very kind to me. And this was never about monetization. It's never about making money. It was about trying to disseminate or spread information that I thought would be helpful to people. And I've been delightfully surprised that it's been very successful. And so, and the book really kind of found me, Lydia. I didn't find the book. I've never wanted to write a book. I'd never even crossed my mind to write a book. And then I wrote a blog post back in 2014 about perfectly hidden depression that went viral. And so I followed my instincts and researched and, you know, 5 years later, I had a book. So it was quite a story.
And here's, and I was saying this to everybody. I have a brain injury that I had no idea I had.
Mhm.
I've been into 7 psych units.
Wow.
I no, I'm good, right? And one thing I always fought therapists on, and you are the only psychologist who has been able to have me look at it differently. And
Huh?
I'm a hardcore advocate. I'm like, a traditional Puerto Rican girl. So I'm like, no, 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 no. So where I come from, you leave your parents alone, you move on, whatever that may be.
Mhm.
But when you explain the importance of knowing why we do certain things, I
Mhm.
was like, crap. I have to write apology letters to 7 therapists. So I was like, I am not discussing my childhood with you. Okay. I'm just not doing that. Just fix me. Just fix me.
It's amazing to me, Lydia, how many people will come into my office and say, well, I don't want to, this is not about blaming my parents. And I look at them and say, no, we're not going to blame your parents. You're an adult. You're fully responsible for yourself. But we can go back and have compassion for whatever strategy we had to devise to emotionally get through whatever the hardships were about our childhood. And every family has problems. So that's the way I like to think about it. Not to go back and blame or hold parents responsible. Now, of course, if there was actual abuse, then sometimes you do need to hold them responsible. But um, I I've seen people all of a sudden understand themselves in a different way because they can connect the dots. They can see how what they decided to do as a child, probably really unconsciously, it was just, I need to emotionally survive. And so they began having this strategy of how to do that. Then that strategy just becomes a way of them living sometimes their adult life. And what one of my important points is that sometimes that strategy may work for you and sometimes it does not, because it belonged in your childhood. It doesn't belong in your adulthood. And it's like I say, it can be very enlightening, and something that actually helps you be more in the present, because you're not carrying around a bunch of stuff from the past that you might not have even recognized that's what you were doing.
That's where you won me over. That's where I was like, oh, that is so smart. But so I want to translate a little bit for our brothers and sisters, and you were perfectly comfortable with that. So, para todos ustedes que no conocen a la doctora Margaret, una de las cosas que me fascinan de ella es que tiene muchísimo material gratuito para el pueblo. Para ella esto nunca, nos comenta, para ella esto nunca ha sido sobre el dinero. Siempre para abrir las puertas de su práctica. 25 años siendo psicóloga, teniendo su doctorado, pero ella también tiene un podcast que usted lo puede escuchar en Audible, iTunes, donde usted quiera escucharlo. Tiene cosas en su Facebook, tiene un Facebook privado, una cosa muy linda, privado donde uno se puede ayudar el uno al otro. Ha sido la única psicóloga que me ha podido, ¿verdad?, llevar más cerca a la importancia de saber por qué somos de la forma en que somos, por qué reaccionamos de la forma en que reaccionamos. La única persona. So, Doc, if I may,
Sure.
if I may, because, having you here is such a privilege, but I want to tell you about what I did today. May I?
Of course.
And tell the audience?
Please.
I always use myself.
Okay.
So you have, so I picked it up and I thought, obviously, I'm not going to answer yes to most of these things. Of course not. So you have a checklist for perfectly hitting depression.
Mm-hmm.
So todo el mundo que está en la casa, yo se lo voy a pasar. Is it okay if I share it with others?
Oh, please do.
Okay. Yo se lo voy a pasar y se lo voy a traducir. Mi equipo se lo va a traducir. Pero yo quiero que ustedes vean que yo tenía la actitud de, nada de esto me aplica a mí. So, boy, did I'm like shocked. Do you struggle with confiding in others, especially about your real life difficulties? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate yes. I was like, uh-oh. Okay. Do you obsess about things looking perfect, both for yourself and others, in others' eyes? Yes.
Yes.
So I said yes to 15.
Oh, okay.
I'm in trouble, Doc. How much is it ticket to go to Arkansas?
Well, that questionnaire, by the way, is not, I don't know how you would say it in Spanish. It's not empirically validated. I'm not a professor at a university. I don't have access to research. But what I did was, Lydia, I literally thought about all the people that I had seen that I thought, if I had talked to them about this, they would have identified with perfectly hidden depression. And I literally wrote out all their names. There were probably 10 or 12 at the time. There have been many more since. And I thought, what do they look like in real life? How does this translate instead of this conceptual thing that would be interesting to talk about. What do these people look like in real life? And so I came up with these 23, 24 questions. And so far, I think it's been a helpful tool for a lot of people to say, well, yes, the more you score, the higher you score, then the more likely you are to really struggle with some kind of heavy dose of control. You need to control a lot of things in your life. You don't want to reveal yourself or anything that might be painful. Certainly there are cultures where this is, and you just said, you just don't question your parents. I had a conversation with someone who was Chinese, and they said, sure, I mean, we never do that. We're not supposed to bring dishonor to our parents. And again, the whole idea is not to dishonor them. It's simply to try to understand yourself.
And that's what you got me.
Yeah.
That explanation right there, because I felt, Doc, that really it was blaming my parents and strangers at all that. You don't have the right to blame my parents. You don't know them. So I immediately became very defensive about these people who've given me life. Right.
Well,
And
I will tell you, Lydia, I walked out of a therapist's office one time when he said something negative about my mother. I walked out. I was infuriated that he would say something like that. That was when I was just trying to figure out some of this stuff. I remember calling him back the next day and saying, I think you kind of struck a chord. So maybe we need to talk about this more.
I absolutely agree with you. But you explained it in a way that I felt like it was loving. It was not judgmental. It was clear that the parent, he or she or they may, whatever circle you were brought up in, most of the time they do the best with what they can do.
Yes, I would.
And they too have their own journey, right?
Right, exactly.
But here's the interesting part. Para todos ustedes que no conocen a la doctora, ella tiene, ¿verdad? Unas preguntitas, y ella me dice, yo no soy profesora, nada por el estilo, es una guía. Entonces yo comencé a leerla y yo dije, esto no va a ser para mí, obviamente. Señoras y señores, tuvo que decirle que sí a 15. A 15. Eso le pregunto a la doctora que cuánto es el pasaje para ir a Arkansas, porque estoy en problemas. Listening also to your podcast, the many different topics with the same heart to help.
Thank you. I'm known around here for being a fairly, hopefully compassionate, but very goal-oriented kind of therapist. I don't have very many people who see me month after month after month after month and just talk. I'm more, okay, what do you want to change in your life? And what's making you unhappy? What's making you depressed? What's making you anxious? Some of that could be past stuff, some of present stuff. And let's see what we can do about it. And that's the approach that I take on the podcast as well, to try to help people realize that even though it may be a very small thing, there's often something you can do, even if it's to educate yourself or to try something different or to ask for help. I have panic disorder, which is one of the reasons why my cheeks are red, because I get anxious when I'm speaking. But I went to a therapist years ago and said, I want to get rid of this panic. I hate my anxiety. And he looked at me and he said, Margaret, your anxiety is just as important a part of you as the part of you where you feel those are your strengths. And I began looking at that and thinking, okay, so I need to manage my anxiety. I don't want to get rid of it. I need to manage it. And most mental illness, any kind of problem, if you accept its presence in your life and don't hate it, then you can begin to manage it and to work with it, to accept its presence, but not resign yourself to its presence. Very different, accepting versus resigning.
I think that's such a golden nugget. Can I translate that? Because I think so many of us, including myself, I wanted to get fixed.
Yep.
So give me the medication, give me the treadmill that I'm supposed to be on, just send me to the guru. At that point, I was just send me anywhere. And I did not ever hear that, ever, until I started reading your book. And the fact that you are able to be vulnerable and say, I, as a human being, suffer of anxiety.
Sure,
And
I do.
and that it just blows your mind because you're thinking, what? Really? And welcoming it and saying that. So I want to translate this for our audience who prefers to speak Spanish. La doctora nos explica a nosotros que ella también sufre de ansiedad y me dice, pues mis mejillas ya están rojitas porque pues hablando en público pues me provoca ansiedad. Voy al terapista porque ella está tratando de trabajar algunas cosas ella misma y le dice al terapista, yo quiero eliminar esta ansiedad, yo lo que quiero es que se vaya por completo. El terapista, él o ella, le dice a ella, ¿qué tal si aceptamos que es parte de ti y aprendemos a manejarla? Yo no sé ustedes, pero a mí nunca nadie me ha dicho eso. Acepta lo que es parte de ti y vamos a manejarla. I can hear someone in my doctor's office, if I had diabetes, saying, hey, this is part of what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Here is how we can treat this.
Mm-hmm.
And here are your options, but diabetes is present in your life.
Right. If you don't accept its presence, you're not going to learn how to manage it. You're going to get neuropathy, and you will ignore all the things you need to do medically. Again, and I think I heard you. I know, and I can speak French, so I can hear some of what you're saying.
Oh yeah.
But acceptance isn't the same as resignation. That you give up, that you feel hopeless, that you just don't feel like anything can be done. That's not what acceptance is. And so I think that you're exactly right. When I looked around the literature on perfectionism, there are a lot of workbooks on perfectionism. But to my knowledge, those do not attend to why it happened and what you have to do to go back and have compassion for why you developed this stance of needing to look and control, hide your pain, why you're carrying around so much shame. And I think that I know that's important, because the weed will grow back if you don't, exhume its roots. And so it's not that my book is a be all end all, but it is a start. I do have exercises in the book. They're like 60 something exercises, but they lead you, they work with you in the present. But they also, I certainly in the treatment part of the book talk about how you begin to accept it. What kind of rules are you still following? Musts, shoulds, oughts, have tos that really in your adult life are keeping you imprisoned versus leading you to have a more fulfilling life. Lydia, I cannot stress this enough. Worldwide suicide rates are, of course, the pandemic hasn't helped, but suicide rates are going exponentially higher. And there's some great research out of Canada that tie in this trend toward greater perfectionism and looking like your life is a certain way as a part of that suicidal trend. In fact, I have tragically been contacted by parents, by friends, by spouses of people who said, my friend died by suicide, and this is actual case. She had your book on her nightstand. And so I read it, or parents who say, I didn't know my son had been accepted to a wonderful college and seemed so excited about his future, and he killed himself. So please watch anybody that's a trigger for. So be careful listening. So I, again, I took this big risk because I'm actually looking at our profession a little bit critically as well, because I think that we have, as a profession, gotten too glued to this clinical criteria that people must fit to be designated as depressed. And the two major things that have to exist in the clinical literature are depressed mood that is obvious, and a change in previous functioning, as well as what's called anhedonia, which is the lack of pleasure in previously pleasurable activities. People with perfectly hidden depression don't have any of that. They are going gangbusters. Their lives look successful. They have friends. They are volunteers. They do a lot of church work. They are very, very caring people, but they don't share themselves.
Dr. Margaret, when I heard this, and obviously going through the checklist, and you knew I had a long drive, so that long drive also came back to, I had to get back home as well. So I got to do a lot of listening. I immediately bought the book because I wanted to hear some of the exercises and so on and so forth. Para todos ustedes que tienen alguna pregunta para la doctora, yo estoy más que dispuesta de hacerle la pregunta. Esta es una oportunidad espectacular para nosotros poder comenzar en nuestras comunidades a hablar de algo que no se habla en común. Esta depresión es la depresión que la gente que somos perfeccionistas, que lo tenemos todo bajo control, todo está bajo control. La casa está limpia, vamos a la iglesia 3 veces a la semana, participamos, somos voluntarios, somos parte del PTA, somos parte de todo. Jamás te imaginas que esa persona está deprimida, pero no pueden compartir su propio yo contigo. No pueden compartir su propio yo contigo. And I'm very honest with our audience and with the people who follow us. And I do it because I know that I wish I had a place where I could have gone to talk these things out. As a matter of fact, for me, I had more in common with recovering addicts.
Really? That's interesting.
That I did with the depression groups.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the men and women I met were at, they were pretty at a good place of healing.
Yeah.
And they were action driven, and that I understood.
Sure.
But the minute I remember this therapist, anybody feel free to laugh, this therapist at one of the, the outpatient programs, those intense outpatient programs. Right. And he put this boom box. I don't know how many of you are old enough to know what a boom box is.
I know it.
Radio así de grande. And he put this boom box and put this song on. And here we are, and I don't know, 7-10 people in the little group, and said, how do you feel when you listen to the song? Oh. And the monkey in my head, I thought it was so interesting that yours is Bob. Mine is a monkey. And that's his name, Monkey. When I do trainings, I tell people my monkey now says, and my monkey types. He doesn't have a computer. So I hear the ding, ding. And my monkey was saying, just take the boombox, throw it against the floor. The monkey in my head was like, this is insane. This is crazy. How do I feel? How do you think I feel? And so obviously I didn't do very well there. Because I wanted action.
Yeah.
But anything that got close, that wasn't successful, but anything that got close to knowing who I really was hard because I didn't even know.
Well, I don't think you're doing this. I don't want to sell insight or, as a not a very good thing. Insight, figuring things out can cause all kinds of aha moments and, oh, I never thought about it that way. And it's another perspective. But what I've learned is that insight does not give you hope. I can understand the heck out of something, but if my behavior doesn't change, if my thoughts don't change, if my feelings don't change, then I'm not very hopeful. And what I think we all get we all get supported by, or we feel we feel very good about, is when we can say, I see myself changing in a way that I think is much more potent for me, much stronger for me, much more fulfilling for me. I have better connected with the people I love. I have more purpose. I have a true sense of real purpose. And so my work, again, I was trained in psychoanalytical therapy, and, I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I wasn't very good at it. So, I really, therapy in general, psychology in general has moved to a much more transparent model. Um,
Mhm.
and especially with so many therapists on social media trying to spread the word about what their particular
Mhm.
system is. And it's grown a lot more transparent. And that, I think, has its benefits, and I think it has some consequences as well. So, but for your listeners, um, I just think that, people tend to believe that going into therapy means you're giving someone else the right to change your life. And that's not it at all. I'm there to help. I have these years of work with people just like you, people like me. And sometimes I feel like I'm a conduit between those people and the person sitting in front of me, because I've gained a lot of wisdom, not from myself, but from what I have watched other people do, and I've been honored to be a part of that journey with them. But it's therapists don't take over. Good therapists don't tell you what to do. They help you make sure you're looking at all the different aspects of that decision or that choice, and trying to help guide you to make the best choice for you.
There's a couple of things that you brought to light for me that I had feeling for such a long time. And when
Mm.
I share my story and trainings is one
Which
of
is
the things
profound,
as
by
an
the way.
advocate.
Your
I'm
story,
sorry?
your story is profound. I mean, it's just, as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh.
I've worked really hard and it's work every day.
Yeah.
And I say this to people all the time. I have days where I'm not as strong as I would like to be. I have days where I have to say today is not the day for me to do 300 things. Today is the day where I need to do two things,
Mhm.
maybe. And I'm married to someone who's very supportive.
Good.
And so I have that partner who lived that nightmare with me
Mm.
at 42.
Wow.
And, we've been married for years. So he didn't understand this new wife and where his old one was. And he's very happy, I think, with this new one. And those are his words, not necessarily mine. But I always say to people, if you're not feeling that you're being heard by your therapist, by your doctor, by your neurologist, whomever is treating whatever you need to be treated, it is okay to say this is not a good marriage.
Right.
And you are one of the few people who has actually said that out loud. I remember saying that to a therapist, and she walked me out to the door, yelled at me. And you know what? When people act angry, it always makes me laugh. It's very weird. But that's why I go, because I see like a 5-year-old. I instantly put you in the 5-year-old behavior. I'm like, oh, okay, we can talk like adults. Okay, got it.
No, I mean,
Um,
I have all the
it's
time people come in and say, that thing you said to me a couple of weeks ago, I really think you're wrong, and it's really bothered me. And, we talk about it. I'm a human being, and maybe I wasn't wrong, maybe I was wrong, but we talk about what, the reaction she had, and I look at what I was thinking when I said it and think, well, I can see how you would have taken it that way. And we just have an adult conversation about it. And actually, many times, when you think about the therapeutic relationship being one where you're practicing how you want to be in the rest of your relationships, hopefully safely practicing. Obviously, with that therapist, she wasn't mature enough to handle that kind of comment from you. But if you think of the therapeutic relationship as one where you're starting to learn how to feel safe with conflict, where you're starting to risk a little more revelation about yourself, that you want those kinds of things to gradually begin to seep into the other relationships in your life, so that
Absolutely.
you use that as a practice, a rehearsal of, and you grow in that relationship, and then you think, well, who are other people in my life that I could trust like this? But yeah, therapeutic breaches are hard. And in fact, I've done 2 recent podcasts about it, because I did one and then I got so many responses from it. I actually done one this week too. So
There is, you have a part of having a very soothing voice,
thank you.
which is easy to listen to podcasts. I've tried to listen to certain podcasts, but again, having a neurological issue, also sound is very important to me. Like, so I'm a little bit different than maybe others.
Certain sounds.
Right. So sound is, like the voice of someone can be very screechy, although they have the most beautiful voice for others, but your voice is very soothing to me. But you are able to explain, and I don't feel like you're teaching. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I listen to your podcast, I feel like, huh, okay, yeah, no, oh, I could see that. Or I could say, oh my God, I'm terrified. I'm not there yet. Um, but I have this now. And so I love that I can listen you're over 200 now? 200, what's your number now of podcasts?
214, I think, is this next week, and we just passed 2 million downloads. So yeah, it's a lot. It's funny, Lydia, I feel as if, am I a little smarter than I was when I first started this? Yes. But do I owe that to me? Not really. I have my little bit of wisdom that's based on my own personal experience. You have your own little bit of wisdom, and so does every person that comes to see me. Just because they're coming into therapy in a time where they're demoralized, or they feel as if they have screwed their lives up, or someone has hurt them very, very badly, they have their strengths. They have things that they have wisdom about. And I learn so much from everyone I work with. So it's one of the things that keeps me from burning out, because I literally want to learn more about what this person knows about PTSD, or what they know about parenting, or what they know. I got a great piece of advice about parenting years ago. This woman that was not in therapy with me for something about parenting, but I asked her, I said, you don't seem to be having trouble letting go of your children. And she said, I decided a long time ago that I would revel in every age they were. And so when they were then became older, and I would relish that it became easy to let go of, because I'd literally squeezed it tight and I've never forgotten that. And it's a little piece of wisdom I learned from one of my patients. So um, I don't have I'm sharing information, but I'm not teaching information. So it's very different.
And that's how it comes across to
Good.
me. And that's why it was so important. There is one thing that I struggled with calling you. And I say this to everybody. I really struggled. I thought, how in the world am I going to get this well-known author, been in psychology 25 years, everybody knows who she is. She has a podcast. Would she say yes to the Lilly Sin Barreras little show? Um,
Of
and
course.
No, but that's exactly how I was feeling. And then it was like, okay, one of my practices is, what is the worst that can happen is no. Can I live with no? Yes, I can live with no. So although there's anxiety there, of course, and then we chatted on the phone, and then you told me about somebody else that also had called you, and I thought, I hope I'm talking to the right person. She's way too calm. Very, very okay with us. How do you adopt? There are some people here who are talking about PTSD.
Oh, okay.
Um, this is very, very difficult for many, many people. I'm
Mhm.
not a clinician. I support my brothers and sisters in the ways that I can, but I'm not a clinician. I'm an advocate. So I try to make sure that I'm the liaison so people could go and meet Dr. Margaret. They could, talk about this therapist or that therapist and how do I get there? Or maybe not traditional. Some people don't want to go traditional way. Some people want to go holistic. And I do a little bit of everything. I do a little bit of everything. There was a time I was in over 17 different meds and I was a
Oh,
zombie.
wow.
It was
Or
just horrific. But now I found the right cocktail for me.
good.
And I do holistic stuff, I do yoga, and I do all of these things. But with PTSD,
Mhm.
I have friends, colleagues, and loved ones who are right here, right now, saying, what can you recommend for me? Who I literally have PTSD. We have women who are either in a relationship that is toxic,
Yeah.
on their way out of that relationship,
Mhm.
finding ways of why they should leave and can they leave safely. Because that's one of my things that when I work with my clients, I say, okay, let's put a plan of action together.
Well, so are you talking about PTSD in the context of marital abuse? Is that what
Yes.
you're okay?
Yes.
Okay. Because there are a whole lot of
Oh, yeah.
sources of PTSD. There's sexual abuse and there's war crime. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Living through horrific disasters is another one. I'm sure many Puerto Ricans have that after the hurricane, several hurricanes that have hit the island. Um, well, I am an advocate for a technique called EMDR, but before we get to that, you know, relationship. I was a professional singer in my 20s, and I got
Love that.
started volunteering at the battered women's shelter in Dallas, and that's actually how I got involved in psychology. And what I learned there was so important because we had women who'd been thrown out of cars, and the abuse was horrible, and yet they'd go back. And so, what I learned was to really respect how difficult it is to leave. Often there are actual threats of hurting the children or hurting you or hurting family members. Um, there also can be something called a trauma bond, which means that it's a very dramatic relationship. When it's very good, it's fantastic. And when it's really bad, it's awful. And you know, there's, these women are often isolated, and some men don't. Let's not forget that the gender
Mhm.
can be different. They usually have been isolated. They're usually, I myself was in an abusive relationship in my second marriage, and I stayed in that relationship for far too long because this definitely was sort of this trauma bond, and which keeps the relationship really unclear. And when boundaries have been crossed, you're usually blamed for that. So, and yet you feel very dependent on this person, like you're not real sure what you would be without them. So, leaving is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. And especially if they're children or their financial problems or, and so we could do a whole nother segment on
That'd
uh,
be great.
how to safely and try to at least safely leave an abusive relationship. But if you just want to have therapy for it, if you are, a lot of things when in PTSD is when you remember an event that was violent or outside of the realm of normal human experience, and you're just completely emotionally drained and you can't think about it without having a panic attack or wanting to hurt yourself or self-harm or something. EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, is an excellent technique for trauma. It sounds a little wacko, but frankly, but it is a technique that a therapist guides you to sort of stay in the present while you're also recalling the past, and it's that shift back and forth from present to past, from present to past, from present to past, that allows you to make some connections about it that help you begin to let go of so much of the intense emotion around it. It doesn't make you forget it, but it gives you more of a sense of emotional control over it. That's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. I actually was trained in it about 5 to 6 years ago. I took 2 years of training and enjoyed doing it very much and saw it was very helpful. But then I started writing the book and I couldn't keep up the training, so I stopped doing it. But I'm a big believer in it. And they are EMDR certified therapists where they go through, several weeks of training and get this certification that makes them very highly qualified to do it. But if it's trauma from way back when, if it's childhood trauma, if it's often children who are abused will choose abusers because it's familiar. So sometimes just talk therapy can help too, just regular talk therapy. And all I can say is that, PTSD can absolutely sabotage the happiness of your life. And if you're living in an abusive relationship currently, it is just you're both glued to it and you hate it. And so it's this push-pull of how to start using more of your rational mind to see it for what it is and to begin to quit blaming yourself for it. And one of my ex-husbands used to say to me, you better stick with me because if anybody else knew who you really were, you would be rejected. And I believed him for years until, by the grace of the powers that be, I got in a situation where I started getting fresh information about myself and began realizing that simply wasn't true, that I have my faults, but that, I wouldn't be rejected because of them. But that's the kind of thing that someone who is perpetrating abuse on someone else will tell them.
So, la doctora nos dice claramente de que hay mecanismos donde podemos utilizar. Ella recomienda uno de ellos. Le vamos a poner un enlace para que ustedes lo utilicen, donde ustedes pueden trabajar con el trauma. Y hay una recomendación que ella hace donde tú puedes estar en el trauma presente, pero saber cómo navegarlo y aprender de ello. O estás pendiente al trauma, no estás completamente ido, pero aprendes la tecnología. La doctora también comparte con nosotros con mucha bondad, nos deja saber que ella también estuvo en una relación que no fue saludable y que esta persona siempre le decía, yo soy lo mejor que tú tienes, porque si la gente sabe quién en realidad tú eres, pues no te van a aceptar. Doc, what you just said right now, it applies to so many people. So many of us may be in a romantic relationship, maybe in friendships. We almost feel like it's not okay to walk away
Right.
because people may know who we really are.
Right.
This fear of being transparent, this fear of saying no. And when I was going through this checklist, I was almost terrified and not terrified to the point that I promise you I'll be okay tonight, but terrified at I do all of these things. I will love you forever. I'll go to your house. I'll clean it for you. I'll iron your shirts. There's no task that's too big or too small. But the minute you say to me, Lily, what do you need? Or Lydia, what do you want? My answer is, I'm good.
Well, you're pointing out something. Of course, a lot of abusive relationships have to do with the perpetrator of the abuse being narcissistic or having some narcissistic traits. And they're very adept at manipulating. And so you add perfectly hidden depression in there, and you take a lot of responsibility. I mean, who does someone with narcissistic traits who doesn't want to take responsibility for anything, who will they attract? Someone who takes responsibility for everything. Someone who wants to underfunction will attract someone who will want someone who is a complete overfunctioner. So, I think that it's an unhappy marriage, obviously, because it's never about the needs of both. There's no give and take, and yet, as some of the early writers about battered women syndrome talked about, is that your own shame at being involved in this kind of relationship is so great that it will keep you tied into that relationship because you don't ever see a way that you could live down that shame or that sense of failure. And again, there could be children involved. So it's a very complicated situation.
I was reading your book, or at least an Audible, and this experience, I almost walked in with you into the house. I exactly knew why you made that decision, although I'm not a clinician. I'm not saying any of that. I could see where somebody's heart. Um, and you walk to this woman's house. The husband calls you and says, I'm really concerned. You live close by enough where you can take that right out there. And you literally save someone's life who didn't look like anybody who would even remotely
Mm-mm.
commit or try suicide. And I remember how descriptive you were about the house was completely clean. Everything was organized. The toys were put away. I mean, all of those things that you go, wow. Some of us go into houses like that and go, wow, how much time do we have?
Yeah.
Because I can't do all of that. And I'm being a hypocrite because I won't let anybody come to my house until I've, done all of those things, I was taught that I need to do. And then you find her in her bed, and she doesn't want you to call the ambulance. You obviously know that that's the right thing to do. Um, and you save her life, and then she chooses to save her own moving forward.
Right.
I cannot imagine what that was like for you.
Well, it was a unique experience. I've never had anything like that happen. Not that I haven't had tried to help people who have been suicidal, but I've never been that hands-on in trying to help them. I don't know exactly why I did that, Lydia. It was just a feeling in my gut. I had diagnosed this woman with anxiety, and but there was something in her husband's voice. There was something, I don't know. I'd never done anything like that before. I've never done anything like that since. Um, but I just took myself over there, and with his blessing, he told me the garage code and all that stuff, and it was eerie. And I wish I could tell you that it was at that moment that I figured out, hey, I need to write a book, or I need, but it made such an impression on me that I think I began looking at people differently. And I started looking for these things that were under the surface. I started looking for, as a clinician, I started looking for those people who avoided my eyes when they were talking about, if I asked them, were you ever sexually abused or have you been abused? And they'd sort of look out the window and go, oh no, not me. I've got so many blessings in my life that, and I began noticing that, and that maybe there were even people who didn't have a vocabulary for the pain in their life. And as I began noticing that over the years, I did try to get under the surface of those people and what they were presenting to me. And, I've had clinicians certainly come up to me and say, we all know this is out there. You just put a name to it. And that's all well and good. They're right. I mean, many clinicians know that perfect looking people are not perfect, and they actually are hiding a lot of things. But maybe they're hiding, abuse at home or whatever. And so I, and yet, again, I'll stress that as a profession, unless someone looks like they're coming apart, then we will misdiagnose them or dismiss what they're bringing into us as just over analyzing or something like that. So I've been much more careful, and I was honored to write a book and try to get this more in the center of people's understanding of what just, depression doesn't have to look like melancholy or anger or agitation. It can look like someone whose life is just a little bit too perfect, and yet they can't talk about pain.
There is something that you highlighted for me, and I will take to therapy as well. But I want you to say, I know the time is never on our side, and I hope that you will come and join us again because you are a fountain of information, and you're kind and you're generous, and I know that your heart is in it. And I think you're just freaking good.
I'm gonna go
um,
down and tell my husband that he should really, treat me more nicely.
you want me to say it in Spanish? Ella está perfecta. Trátemela muy bien, okay? Um, there's something you talked about that I do constantly. Doesn't matter what is going on in my life, I count my blessings and
Mhm.
I disregard completely. And you have anything that's going on. Yeah, I'm tired, but what a blessing I was able to serve 40 people today. Yes, I have this headache that I can't get away from, but other people are dealing with XYZ. Yeah, oh, but look at what we've been able to do. Or I've even made excuses for people who are toxic. And I
Yeah,
look and go, oh my God, it's because, the mama, the papa, the cousin, the this, the that. And gratitude, gratitude, and that's all you hear these days, right? Is you got to live in gratitude. And I am very grateful to be alive right now, and I'm very grateful to have the privilege to do what I do now and to have to find my way as I have again. But you teach, well, you say you don't teach, but you bring us closer to a balance. I can be grateful
and
and
right. As I often like to say, the glass is half full and half empty by definition. Okay, so I think most healthy, happier people usually do live in the side that's half full and are very grateful for the things that they have in their lives that are positive. But I also know that every blessing, I mean, it was such a blessing for a publisher to actually buy my book. The book is so much better of a book because a publisher bought it. And I'm very grateful that I got the opportunity to write this book. Writing the book nearly killed me. I mean, it was very hard on me physically. And so, am I grousing about something, or complaining about it if I talk about that every system of my body went into overdrive? I don't think so. I just think it came along with it. And I still am very grateful. And I'm very cognizant that maybe I'm too old to write another book. But I, sometimes people of faith really struggle with this. They will come into my office and say, I feel like I'm not being grateful enough. I feel like haven't prayed hard enough. I have this depression or I have this anxiety and I'm failing God. I'm failing, my spiritual life. And my comment to them is, you know, I mean, I was raised in the church, and so I can sometimes use some biblical stories to talk about it, but is that it is that your spiritual life can be deep, can be very deep, and can act to anchor you and to uplift you for many situations. And even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, and I'm obviously not going to quote Jesus very well, but he said, "Are you sure I have to do this? Do I really have to get crucified tomorrow?" There was a sense of he was in pain about it. And so now maybe that's a too liberal way of thinking for many people. But at the same time, I see people going through very difficult things, children's deaths, rapes, tornadoes destroying their homes. I mean, just losing and, chronic illness, be it mental or medical, people dying from COVID. It's just, it is very difficult sometimes to find gratitude, but that doesn't mean you're failing. That means that sometimes it's important to me to get connected with the sadness and the grief of things. And then you can get back to the gratitude. But it's an and gratitude and grief.
I never heard that before, and I always used to feel so guilty. Remember having drives home and going, I'm so exhausted, I need a day off. Oh my God. But then if I fail at this, or I don't show up at this, or if I don't do this, or I don't do that. And when I heard you, I was like, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like, I have this piece over here going, yes, I am exhausted. Yes, I
Yes.
am tired. But that doesn't mean I'm not grateful for this beautiful experience I can have or did have, or the greatness of people, coming to my rescue when I needed it. But Doc, where can we find your book? I can tell everybody because I'm going to put it all over the place. Your podcast, it is incredible. I mean, 6 hours I did in the past 2 days. Just want you to
Wow.
know. 3 hours on my ride where I was going, 3 rides on my ride back. So not one moment that I feel, oh, that's not an episode that I don't want to listen to. And then I started the book and I thought, wow, this makes a lot of thinking opportunities is what I talk about all the
You
time.
can
It gives
find the book
me to think.
anywhere. You can find the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. We need to really support our local bookstores. So they may not have it on their shelves. They probably don't. I'd be amazed if they did, really. But you can order it through them. And so you can actually also order it through the publisher themselves, New Harbinger. As far as the podcast, it's called the Self-Work Podcast with Dr. Margaret Rutherford. It's all over everywhere, too. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. It's on iHeartRadio. It's on I think it's called Player FM or something like that. Stitcher. I mean, all over the place. So, and it's free. There's all the downloads are free. So download away. And then my website is drmargaretrutherford.com. And you can subscribe there and you'll receive one weekly newsletter that has really kind of everything I've been doing that week. And sometimes excerpts from that, and then just some general encouragement that I might offer, something like that. So I am Lydia. I cannot thank you enough for having me on. I was so excited, thinking, I want to reach all kinds of audiences, and the fact that you're translating this into Spanish for me is really very meaningful for me. And so I don't have translations on my website right now, but hopefully, if you put them on Facebook, I think you can find translation apps that would work. So I'm hoping that would be available to people, and I welcome everyone to be a listener or a reader. The book is not easy. If you actually do the exercises that are in the book, it's kind of being in a therapy session. I mean, it's not. And all along the book, I say, if you have significant trauma in your childhood, don't just count on this book. Seek some help from a professional, because that work is very complicated. But I wanted the book to guide. I wanted to use my own life. The stories in the book are real. They're either come from my own patients or people that volunteered to talk with me anonymously. And all those stories are real. So I hope that, that's helpful to realize there are people just like you who have this quandary about, is it really okay if I show people that I am not totally in control, and can I have more self-acceptance? That I think the antidote to perfectly hidden depression is self-acceptance.
And it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
And it's okay. Right? One step at a time. I think it's so important for us to be able to say that it's okay. one step at a time.
Well,
It's
I'm
okay.
56 years old, and I'm still making those steps. I still figure things out that I think, "Oh, that's a good way to think about that." And I'll probably be figuring things out for a long time, so anyway.
We are so grateful that you decided to come on. We are so, so grateful to you. I can't imagine what's gonna happen to us now once we start giving out some of these books, to people, and
Oh, that's right, we decided to do a little giveaway, right?
yep, we decided to give a couple of books out, so if any of you are interested, male or female, don't shy away. Hide it wherever you wanna hide it. It's okay. Um, and,
Do
feel
that,
free.
sign it, and mail it myself with a personal note, so that'll be great.
So let us know that you are interested in the book. We've done this with other authors. I hope you had a good experience with us here on
Oh my
Lilly.
god, I'm sorry it took me a while, I just didn't realize there was another, link I was supposed to use. I used the one that I'd been sent, but there was a new one, I guess, so that's fine.
Life is interesting for me some days.
Well, it's imperfect, isn't it? And that's okay.
And that's what I tell the audience all the time. I'm like, yep, today was not my day. Today was definitely my day. God bless you. We hope to
Thank
see
you
you
very much.
soon. And I hope you come back.
And you as well, just let me know, I'd be more than happy to.
Yay! Thank you so much. Thank you, Doc.
Gracias.
See you soon. De nada. Para todos ustedes, yo no sé si disfrutaron a la doctora. Hay muchísima información que vamos a proveerle a todo el mundo. So everybody will get some information. If you do want the book, just inbox us and we will order the book for the people who have been here today. It's a great present for people. Si quieren regalar un libro como este, fascinante libro, como yo le digo, yo lo estoy leyendo en Audible porque a mí se me hace un poquito más fácil así, pero ella tiene en Facebook, si van a la página de ella, Dr. Margaret Rutherford, PhD, la van a conseguir en Facebook. Ella tiene un grupo abierto a todo el mundo, tiene un grupo privado. Siéntanse libre en buscar lo que ustedes necesitan. Rebecca Slater says, yes, I'm interested in the book. That's great. Juanita, there you go. Saimar, I don't know if you would be interested. So anybody else, just please let us know. Juanita will follow up. Name is Wanda. I have love, call her Juanita. But before we go, we always have, how do I inbox you? Just on Lily Sin Barreras on the page. You can inbox us, and it doesn't take more than 24 hours for us to respond to you. But before we close, this has been a little bit more of a longer show than usual. I want to express my most sincere gratitude to all of you who continue to support us. I want to really, really express my gratitude to Jeffrey Dressler's Wall, who always says yes, who always says, we believe in what you do. We believe that you are making change, and this is where we want to focus. Próximamente el departamento de mercadeo que nosotros tenemos le va a explicar a través de nuestra página qué es lo que hacemos. I know a lot of people have been calling me and saying, how do I get in touch with you? What do you do? And marketing is working on that. I do have a consultation that you can have on the phone, or you can have via Zoom. We talk as an advocate. I tell you what's been helpful for me, not helpful for me, and I can be the liaison to many things and remove barriers. If you go onto our YouTube channel, you've seen many of the things we have been able to do, and the stories we have been able to cover. So if you have a story, Eddie, I love you. Thank you so much. Saimar, gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Rebecca Slater, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for unboxing me and letting me know how you felt and that you still wanted to be part of the show. I always depend on that. Please share the show with others that you think it will be helpful for them to hear and to know about Dr. Margaret, who I really believe is making change. It is okay. It is okay to go to therapy. It's okay to talk to someone. It's okay to have a group that you go to. It's okay to call someone. I had someone call me and I was in the middle of a long ride, and I couldn't get away to have a private conversation with them, so I was kind of worried about them. And remember what my husband reminds me all the time: I can't save the world, but I can definitely try to touch one, two, 10, 15, 20 people. I do want to express my most sincere healing powers to Elba Cruz Shulman's family. Let's continue to keep them in the good vibes and in the good prayers, as they are putting um, Elba to rest. And many of us have seen many, 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 many people depart way too soon. Please take care of one another. Wear your mask. I know that it's been difficult watching what happened at the Capitol. Um, that is not the America I know, and I've said it out loud. I think many people who are Republicans are even shocked that this group of people decided to misrepresent the America that we believe in. Okay? And I pray that moving forward we can collaborate regardless of what side of the aisle we are on. Please share your good vibes. Let's respect each other's opinions. Let's be kind to one another, but let's be sincere. Okay? Lots of changes are taking place here on Lilly Sin Barreras, but you will always be included if you want to be. I really, before I go, must thank my daughter, Lucila, and my granddaughter, Madison, for spending time with me this weekend and making it such a beautiful weekend for their mom and grandma. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I needed that so much. For my husband, who is so supportive of having his wife be gone for the weekend, thank you. Thank you so much. So, my belief, God bless you, and I hope to see you next Monday. And if you want to tell us your story, we're here, we're listening. Okay? Talk to you soon. Ciao.